kudos to Libby Metton. I mean, she's done okay for her first time out there. But she, Rita, was actually one of the first Libs in this country to stand up and say unequivocally, we're going to stop the puberty blockers for kids. Or she took on that whole transgender thing very well, which was great. So, James, it's great to see a Liberal at a state level actually fighting the woke agenda.
Yeah, she's done some good things, and unlike the previous Liberal leader, she didn't concede the election before the election.
Well, that
so
always
that's
helps.
That always helps. Thing. But of course, I mean, there's two good things that have happened for the Liberals. One, they are now the official opposition party again, because at the last election with just 2 seats, the Nationals were the official opposition. And the other thing, of course, is that Basil Zempilas, the Perth Lord Mayor, looks like he has won a seat.
Yes.
And to me, he would be the future Liberal leader
great,
in
Basil.
that state.
He's a character.
I think so, yeah.
Really? Well, yeah, OK. I disagree. A lovely guy, but barely a Conservative.
There you go. There you go.
Barely a conviction politician. And I think that's the sort of people we need in leadership to actually have any sort of chance at being elected. And I acknowledge there has been a shift from what we saw at the previous election, and that's reflected probably in the numbers. There's Labor's lost, 20%? But it doesn't change the fact that you can't just be a Johnny-come-lately and pick off a couple of high-profile issues and say, OK, we're going to go with the mainstream on this one and expect to be elected. It has to be more meaningful than that. It has to be... it has to be far broader than that. So you've got to give people a clear choice, and I acknowledge it's not an easy task, but WA, you look at what sort of a state it is, where people work, what their values are, and the referendum was a very good indicator of that. They are not being served well by their state politicians.
They actually need someone like Tony Seabrook, who we've had on this show many times, head of the
He'd be a revelation.
Pastoral and Graziers Association. He'd be fantastic in the Libs, or the Nationals, I presume he's a National, at the forefront of a campaign. And the point is, as Rita was saying, Western Australia is inherently conservative in its values. They had these ghastly Aboriginal heritage laws, which Roger Cook took a hammering over. Only in the last week of the campaign, Tony Maddox, a farmer, was convicted in WA of putting a concrete kind of thing across a bit of a creek on his own land. Anyone who knows farming in WA, my family are all farmers in WA, knows that to suddenly penalise people for putting down a bit of concrete, James, across a creek so they can get their trucks across or whatever, absolute joke. And it was the Aboriginal heritage laws, when we exposed them here on Outsiders, thanks to Tony Seabrook, that really shifted the entire momentum in the Voice campaign, when the rest of Australia suddenly saw how ludicrous this and out of control this entire Aboriginal heritage fandango is, that people woke up to it. And Rita is right, we need to see from the WA Libs more of that sort of backbone attacking these cultural issues. But the big question, Rita and James, is what happens in the federal election. Because I want to see Rita's ironically wearing a teal jacket today. Let's get a close-up of beautiful, beautiful. It suits you. It suits you more than it suits the electorate of Australia to have the colour teal anywhere near the Houses of Parliament. And I want to see that teal Kate Chaney punted. She's a joke. She's a farce. You've got a brilliant Liberal there, Tom White, waiting in the wings to step in. The federal election is where WA's got to step up and turf out the Albanese government, James.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And, I think it was an advantage for the Labor Party in West Australia that Anthony Albanese was busy on the east coast of Australia with that cyclone, because he's not exactly popular over there. And where the Liberals have picked up seats in the West Australian election is in those regional areas where some of those cultural heritage laws really have bitten, especially in the farming community, who have been under attack, not just in that, but with live sheep exports. So there's a lot of angst there, and that will bite federal Labor, you would think, at the election.
Rita, let's just play Roger Cook as he seems to set about insulting JD Vance. This was his brilliant contribution. He called... We don't have the clip, but he basically sat there and was asked one word that sprang to mind when he was when the words JD Vance came up, and he said, knob.
Yeah,
terrific. What a great bloke.
And he got, a sort of a couple of laughs from the leftist audience there. He was playing up to that. But again, it shows you just the calibre of the state politicians we have. This man's the premier of a state.
A state that should be that close to the USA. It's got all the same minerals, all the same values.
But never mind that. It doesn't matter whatever your own personal feelings may be. We're talking about the US president and vice president to be sending insults their way in a public forum when your state may want to have some significant business dealings with them. It is just so ill-advised. It's so juvenile. It's so reckless. And for what? To get a few laughs from an assembled pack of lefties there? It was just idiotic is what it was. And that's why I just feel so bad for people across the country, because it's not just WA, it is just about every state. The calibre of the politicians we are getting pre-selected, the actual the administration side of the Liberal Party, there's something hopelessly broken there. There needs to be a change. We need to have the party and its candidates reflect the values of people who actually vote for them.
Absolutely.
Then we might have some change.
But Robert, don't forget the West Australian Premier to call the Vice President of the US a knob when we are trying to get the AUKUS agreement across the line. Many of those subs will be based in Western Australia. And you talk about...
They're trying to dodge tariffs. They've got back to put tariffs on aluminium and steel. You've got a resources state where the Premier is making those sorts of insults to... and JD Vance is probably going to be the next president.
Exactly.
So
there was, James, but you're right, James, there was a sub in Perth.
Right.
So they would have been sitting there going, sorry, what did he call him? What did he call him?
As bad as state Labor are...
Get JD, he just called you a canard.
Jim Chalmers was asked what he thought about Roger Cook's comments, and Jim Chalmers wasn't much better. He said, well, I would have used a different term, failing to condemn those comments. Yeah. So it's just bad all round, whether it's state or federal.
Australia is literally at a crossroads at this next election, guys. Australia has the choice of either getting behind the entire Trump American agenda, which we are the natural partner of America economically, mining, agricultural, values, our history, our heritage, our economies, our military, everything says get behind the Trump agenda. And yet the Albanese, the left-wing, wall-to-wall Labor governments that we have loathe America, can't barely disguise their hatred for all things America. So Australia is at a crossroads. This next election, folks, we go one way, the way of prosperity, the way of up. In other words, let's make Australia great again, or we go the way of down, which is the way of more left-wing misery, more left-wing impoverishing ourselves, climate hysteria, woke garbage. This is where we sit, Australia. Within the next 6 weeks, we have to decide, do we go up or do we go down to impoverish ourselves and turn ourselves into the Venezuela of the South Pacific? Let's have a listen to Roger Cook. We've got him. We found him. Here he is. Let's go for it.
JD Vance is a...
knob. Sorry. You've got to have one unprofessional moment, don't you? That was it.
Yes, well, West Australia, well done. You've got an unprofessional moment for the next 4 years of a Labor government. What a farce, seriously, Rita.
It is, and what you just described, you don't have to imagine it. You only have to look at certain European countries to see what happens if you don't go the path that the US is about to take, where you go and completely cripple your economy, self-inflicted damage with these insane green madness that we've signed up to with net zero, where you, especially for a country like us, because if you look at Germany, they're not sitting on the world's biggest reserves of uranium. They're not sitting on enormous amounts of coal and gas. Yeah. We are. We should be the most prosperous country in the world. Our citizens should be enjoying the cheapest energy prices in the world. Instead, we've got some of the most expensive. Our manufacturing industry is completely crippled by these high energy costs. We've already got high wages, which they have to compete with overseas. So it really is a crossroads, and we have so much going for us in this country. Let's not botch it.
We're throwing it all away, James. WA should be about dig, baby, dig and drill, baby, drill. That's what WA election should have been about. And seriously, instead they've got the Woggle, who's a rainbow serpent, stopping people from putting a concrete weir across their creeks. Seriously, what a joke. People will look back in history and go, these people were insane.